Chair recognizes the gentleman from Campbell, 67. For what purpose, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the purpose to act upon a simple resolution and request floor privileges for special guests.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, please have the clerk report House Resolution 44 and please read it in its entirety.
Mr. Clerk, please report.
House Resolution 44, a resolution adjourning the House of Representatives in honor and loving memory of Fern Adkins. Whereas Fern Adkins was a proud daughter of this Commonwealth, having been born in Elliott County on October 5, 1934, to the late James and Florence Fannin Adkins. And whereas Fern Adkins was an esteemed educator and devout follower of Jesus Christ, she was employed by the Elliott County Board of Education and also taught Head Start and was a member of the Sandy Hook First Baptist Church. And whereas Fern Adkins was an avid music lover who loved to dance, always generous with her own treasures, she loved working with children and the elderly. She also cherished her time watching her adoring son, Kentucky State Representative Rocky Adkins, play basketball for Morehead State University, and wasn't above telling the coach what she thought if asked. And whereas Fern Adkins, beloved wife, mother, and grandmother, departed this earthly life and entered into the kingdom of heaven on December 20th, 2017, leaving her family, friends, and all those who had been touched by her presence in solemn mourning. And whereas Fern Adkins was preceded in death by her parents and 8 siblings, she is survived by her husband of 58 years, Jess Adkins, sons, Representative Rocky Adkins and his wife, Leah, and Dave Adkins and his wife, Kathy. Grandchildren, Tori Adkins, Brandon Adkins, Emily Adkins, Michael David Adkins, Jennifer Adkins, Kristen Salyers, and Josh Salyers. 3 great-grandchildren, sisters, Ann Weddington and Sue Witt, and a host of other family members, friends, and loved ones who will dearly miss her presence in their lives. Now therefore be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the General Assembly of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. The members of the House of Representatives hereby express their most profound sympathy upon the passing of Fern Adkins and extend heartfelt condolences to their colleague in the House, Representative Rocky Adkins, and his entire family in this time of loss. When the House of Representatives adjourns this day, it does so in honor and loving memory of Fern Adkins.
Gentleman from Campbell.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield to the gentleman from Elliott.
Gentleman from Elliott.
Mr. Speaker and ladies and gentlemen of this House, I have some very special guests here today with me. You heard the citation that was read, and it was read in really celebration of who my mother was and what she was all about. She's probably the most soft-hearted person that I have ever met, but she had that kind of toughness about her I liked as well. It is true that my 3rd game in my college career was at Indiana University against Bobby Knight. As a freshman, I played a little over 20 minutes in that game, and Coach Martin still tells the story today that after that game was over and Bobby Knight and the Hoosiers had put it on us pretty good, my coach said I felt somebody pecking on my shoulder as I was going to my radio show. And of course, my dad, who I'm going to introduce in a minute, is here today, and my dad's a longtime coach as well, so you know old coaches don't like for parents to question the coach. My mother was pecking Coach Martin on the shoulder, and Coach Martin tells the story, said I turned around and said it was Miss Adkins. And he said, "Can I help you, Miss Adkins?" And she said, "You sure can." She said, "I just want to let you know that I didn't appreciate driving from Sandy Hook, Kentucky, all the way to Bloomington, Indiana to watch my son sit on the bench." I've got many more stories that we can tell about my mother. Boy, you talk about a strong lady. I couldn't have had a better mother. And all of us hear that there's nothing like the love of a mother. Nothing. I do have some very special guests here today, and Many of you on this floor, some of you have met my family before, but some of you may have not. We've got new faces in this chamber now today, but and over the past few years. But here on this floor today, and I would like for him to come up here next to me. If you would, my family. My father, a 50-year public education, 39 years in the classroom, from the left-hand fork of Middle Fork in Elliott County. One of the greatest motivators that anybody could ever be around or anybody could ever speak to about how the cup is always full and never empty. I'll never forget one night as we were working on the budget several years ago, Mr. Speaker, and some things that happened in that budget earlier in my career. I called my dad about 1 o'clock in the morning. They'd removed everything I had in the budget. Well, I was tore up, and I called my dad and just kind of tell you the way he thinks about things. He answered the phone about 1 in the morning. He said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Nothing." I said, "Dad, they've taken everything out of this budget that I've worked on for my legislative career." I said, "Dad, what do you think about that?" And he said, "Well," he said, "I think you ought to take it," or he said, "I think you ought to tell them and to stick it where the sun don't shine." That's about how simple my dad is about things and about how plain he is about things. If my dad would come up here, Jess Adkins, my son, Brandon Adkins, my wife, Leah, and my daughter, Tori, if you all would come up here with me. Mr. Speaker, this is who I am. It's what I'm all about. I think my dad's been here a couple of times, lady from Carter, since I've been elected. He came the first time I was sworn into office when I turned 26 years old, and he came back one other time when I had one of my first bills to come on the floor here. He's always told me, "Son, you go do your thing and I'll do mine." But I could not have had a stronger person, stronger parents, my whole family that has stood strong just as your family has stood with you. We still today celebrate the life of my mother. I want you all to know we didn't have a funeral. We celebrated the life of my mother. My dad, Jess, longtime teacher, longtime coach, just a good person, good solid person, just a good person. He and my mother were married for 58 years and lived a great life together. The two of them together, man, they put their arm around me when they needed to put their arm around me, and I tell you, they kicked me right square in the butt when I needed that as well. And you know, I call that the good sign of good, solid parents. But I wanted my dad to come here today and really to meet all of you and to see all of you, but I wanted you also to understand that in my 31 years of service, whatever I have done in my life, it's been because of my family. And it's been especially because of my mom and my dad. So as we continue to celebrate her life and we carry on her memory, and boy, Dad, we got some good memories, don't we? We got some great memories, some great memories. We're going to continue to celebrate in those memories. And it's not easy for any of us or any of you that have experienced this when you've lost a parent, and especially a mother. But my mom would want us to carry on. And she would want us to continue to do our thing that we do every day in this thing that we call life. My dad stays busy, and I'm glad it's basketball season because he loves it. He watches our little high school team play, and he wouldn't go to the game the other night because he could watch one on TV, he could listen to one on the radio, and then he had phone calls coming in to give him the score on another one. So he got to watch 3 in one night. But if you all would, in the celebration and in memory of my mother, Fern Adkins, who loved music and loved to dance, she made preparation, and she's dancing in a better place today. I know that with all of my heart. My mother's side of the family, there was 8 sisters and 3 brothers. And my mom and dad always told me, lady from Jefferson, that they didn't know they were poor because everybody else was poor too. I tell you what, you talk about just the salt of the earth, just a solid individual. And somebody, when I think about her today and always think about her in my memory now, I do it with a smile. I do it with a smile. Christmas before last, my son Brandon's got a little musical talent as well. He hit a little bluegrass note on that guitar, and my mother was all of a sudden up right in the middle of that floor hitting a little hold-down lick. So at her funeral, my mother's side of the family, gentleman from Jefferson, that's who brought the music. And we played music, and we celebrated my mother's life for who she was and what she was about. The citation that was read was that my mother loved children. And she did. Taught in a daycare center for 20 years or more of her life and worked out as a cashier at a little IGA store there in Sandy Hook. We're going to carry on her life and her memory in us. And if you all would you welcome to this house floor my father Jess, my son Brandon, my daughter Tori, and my wife Leah. Would you all please welcome them here to the house floor today? Speaker, I would yield back to the gentleman from Campbell for adoption of the citation.
Thank you, gentleman. Gentleman from Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think President Lincoln had it right when he said that all I am or hope to be, I owe to my angel mother. With that thought in mind, Mr. Speaker, I move for adoption of the resolution, and furthermore, Mr. Speaker, would you open up the board for co-sponsorship of this resolution honoring Mrs. Fern Adkins, mother of the gentleman from Elliott?
Thank you, gentlemen. The resolution is adopted without objection. Mr. Clerk, please open the board for those members wishing to indicate their co-sponsorship. Resolution is adopted. Chair recognizes the gentleman from